Shroff. But from the little I know, which I can share with you, कि समझो 5000 साल पहले ज़ोरास्टर का जन्म हुआ था. समझो 1500-2000 साल पहले उन लोग इंडिया में आए और तब से ये लोग यहाँ बसते. अभी पारसी लोग ने ये उसका मदरलैंड बना दिया है. हर एक ब्रांच ऑफ लाइफ में उन लोग पार्टिसिपेट करते हैं, स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम द आर्म फोर्सेस टू इंडस्ट्रीज टू एजुकेशन टू हेल्थ सर्विसेज टू लीगल प्रोफेशन. Parsis are sort of like to think of themselves as being independent and would not like to be seen as living on subsidies or artificial support systems. They don't really shy away from it, they shirk it, you see. I think they find it demeaning, you see. On the other hand, within the Parsi community, there are sufficient institutions which have been developed, जो उन लोग की कारोबार देखभाल करती है, like health services, education, etc. जो गरीब आदमी रहते हैं और लोग उसका they have been taken care of, you see. बचपन में तो यही एम्बिशन था कि पहले चांस पे हम लोग यहाँ से निकले और किधर अब्रॉड जावे. उस टाइम तो यही सबसे बड़ा एम्बिशन था सबका. तो आफ्टर मैट्रिकुलेशन you had to go ahead and do your undergraduate work. In those days आपको खाली ग्रेजुएट वर्क के लिए परमिशन मिलती थी. उस टाइम फॉरेन एक्सचेंज का बहुत कंट्रोल था. ओनली इफ़ यू आर अ फर्स्ट क्लास स्टूडेंट आपको आगे पढ़ने के लिए फॉरेन एक्सचेंज मिलती थी. तो सबका एम्बिशन हमारे जेनरेशन में ये था कि कभी वहाँ जा रहे. Because that whole concept was imbibed in our minds that if you want to get a break in life, you got to move from here and do something there. At least not settle there, but at least acquire a good education. So that the path I followed. I studied at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, did my graduate work there, and then lived there for 5 years. I had a green card. I was almost inducted into the US Army because that was the height of the Vietnam War, and being under 26 years old, I was absolutely eligible because if you are a green card holder, you want to have the advantages of American residency, then you have to serve the country. But by grace of God, and that is the only time you bless somebody, when because of medical reasons I was not taken in, you see. God knows what the reason was. They don't share that with you. But I was found not suitable for combat duty. I think perhaps they also felt sorry for me because I was only 22 years old at the time, and being the only child to my parents, possibly that thought might have crossed their mind. And I was holding a master's degree by that time, and everybody else who was called in at the same time for induction, they were like school dropouts, you see. So possibly I stood out in that crowd, and God knows, I would almost say it was a sort of miracle in my life that I was not taken in, because the message was very clear. You pass your medical exam and you are immediately sent for 6 weeks of training. They give you a combat haircut and you are pushed off to Vietnam and you are fodder, you see. But that didn't happen. But then the other thing that possibly I did, which people from my generation did not do at that time, was I came back, you see. most of the people in those days chose to live and work there. Very rarely would you find a person who had a green card and permission to live and reside and work in the United States chose to come back. So when I decided I would come back, I mean, most of my friends, some of my family there thought I was nuts, you see. But I think there were reasons for it. One is that the profession to which I belong, that is architecture. I always had that ambition that I wanted to be self-employed. And that was not that easy to do in those days. I would have ended up working with a corporation, a small cog in a big wheel, you see, so to speak. Other factor that probably influenced me was I was the only child to my parents. But honestly speaking, that was not the main reason. It may sound very nice, but that was not I think the main reason was I wanted to be self-employed. And I thought that this is one place where we belong. You see, no matter all the goodies that you see there, I never felt that I was part of that society. I would say there was some kind of an emotional vacuum, you see. If you ask me what was missing in your life, there was nothing missing in terms of material terms. I had a good job, a very good apartment, I lived a good life, I dressed well, I lived everything, Gango Hori. But then what was missing? That emotional vacuum. I never felt a part of that society. I was always looked upon as a foreigner, and the fact is I was a foreigner, you see, there is no two ways about it. Now, you might cross that definition and almost begin to suggest that you are treated like a second-class citizen. Well, I mean, not many people will agree with that, but that is something very personal. You feel that beyond the point you are not allowed to go, and therefore you are deprived of your rightful placement. Maybe it was personal, maybe it was not. But I chose to come back. I said, even if I have to do without these material comforts, I'll have my self-respect. And to me that was the determining factor. Both my sons, they are all both educated abroad. They have almost lived there 8-10 years of their life. Both went to Ivy League schools. They both did their undergraduate work in Cornell University. One of them also did his master's from Cornell. My younger son is now doing his master's in Harvard, you see. He's got one more term to go. My elder son has come back. He's married a Spanish girl who he met in school, who was also in his graduate class. She is also an architect. My younger son is also an architect. But I think even he will come back. My elder son is already back. So is his wife. They have started their own practice in a small way, but they are independent. My younger son keeps coming up and down. That just goes to show that he's got his roots here. And I think after he graduates in May, I wouldn't be surprised if after a month or so of travel and having a good time after spending almost 10 years in school, he's fed up with school and done it ever since he's born, so to speak. So I think he will also come back. But I don't try to influence him whether he should come back, not come back. It's entirely his decision. Because just because you decide to come back, there is no guarantee that you are going to do well. And just because you stay back, there is no guarantee that you are not going to do well. There are going to be ups and downs in life, regardless whether you are living there or living here. So at least this way, if you make your own choice, you are not going to look at me and say, you forced me to come here, now I am in this predicament. So that was the option given to me by my parents. Likewise, when I got married, it was my choice. My parents didn't try to influence me. And I think that's the wisest thing they did. Because otherwise I would be constantly cribbing and going to them and saying, see, you got me into this mess because you got me hooked up to this girl. The fact is, marriage is a difficult proposition. No matter who you marry. But the fact is, like they say, lakre ka laddu hai. Khao to bhi pastao, nahi khao to bhi pastao. Same courtesy I extended to my son. He calls me one day, I was driving, and he said, I'm getting married. I said, fine. He said, aren't you surprised? I said, why should I be surprised? You are right. You are at the right age. Go ahead. You have my blessings. I'll give you whatever support you want. The idea being, if something goes wrong, for God's sake, don't blame it on me, you see.